Today, Rinpoche elucidated the stages of equalizing and exchanging self with others by way of the 13 points made in Jayan Shema's commentary. Less so once again, we were looking at Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment, specifically the section in training the mind in the stage of the path for beings of great capacity. And when we get to that section, we arrive at a part where we find two causal lineages for realizing or achieving the mind that aspires to enlightenment. And one of those causal lineage, the second, is the teaching of equalizing and exchanging self with others that was passed down from Master Shantideva. So that's the section that we're dealing with right now in the text. So if you turn to page 51 in the English, there's not an actual page number there for that, but if you find 49 or 53, you'll find it. So that's where the chapter starts in the English. And there are three categories under that major heading of the teachings of equalizing and exchanging self with others passed down from Master Shantideva. And so the three categories are as follows. First, contemplating the benefits of exchanging self with others and the faults of not exchanging self with others. Second category is the ability to exchange self with other, and if you accustom yourself to the thought of doing so, if you familiarize yourself with that thought. And then the third category, the stages of meditating on how to exchange self and others. So those are the three categories that deal with this section on Shantideva's practice. So that's where we are, and welcome everyone. Thank you for coming. Okay, Digso. The Yanger Dets Jetsuna Lesso. Oh, Lesso. So the familiarization or the meditation, because again, these are the same exact word. We just, some translators use meditation, some use familiarization. But the word in Tibetan, gom, is really more literally translated as to become familiar with, familiarization. So what is this benefit and the faults? What does this mean of equalizing and exchanging self with others? So the actual practice that one is trying to do is taking the attitude that cherishes oneself, taking that self-cherishing attitude, and then transforming it to an attitude which cherishes others. So here we cherish ourselves and what we have and our things and our parts, and we cherish it in this very deep way. And the exchange is the exchange of that attitude to one that has that same level of cherishing for others' needs and so forth. So this is the exchange. It's an exchange of attitude that transforms the self-cherishing attitude to one that cherishes others. So this is what the exchange is. So there are benefits and to doing so and downfalls to not doing so. Okay. So all of the torment that we've experienced since beginningless time in any among the realms of cyclic existence, the sufferings of the hell, hungry ghost, and animal, on the sufferings experienced in even the higher realms of the humans, demigods, and gods. All of the various types of sufferings of the three realms of cyclic existence that are experienced are caused by self-cherishing attitude, an attitude of self-centered, self-cherishing. So all of the negativities and downfalls and sorrow has been created by this attitude. Then the opposite attitude, which is an attitude that cherishes others, has been the cause for all of our happiness, all forms of happiness that we've experienced in any of the 6 realms of cyclic existence has been a result of our attitude of cherishing other beings. So this is, when we look at that first category, the benefits and the faults, we see that since beginningless time, every bit of suffering we've experienced has been from cherishing ourselves, and every bit of happiness we've experienced has been from cherishing others. Digso. Less. So number 2 deals with the attitude, deals with the potential. Let me just fix this. Testing 1, closer? Okay, but then it rubs. I just have to push it out. How's that? Is that good? All right, because I can't see it, so I don't know. I just don't like it when my ear gets pushed forward. All right, so the ability to exchange, equalizing and exchange itself with others. So what this means, category number 2, is that it's possible to generate this attitude. Because a doubt may arise. Is it really possible to generate an attitude which cherishes others? So this next category says, yes, it's possible. If you familiarize yourself with it over and over again, then you will be able to generate this attitude. So this is category number 2, is that if you familiarize yourself with this idea of exchanging self with others, that if you do it over and over again, that yes, it will become a reality, it will become a realization. The more ngay sampa chik jason yene nga hako me
사지단지 깨르 강화 사지단지 루고 강화 요마로다 사지단지 루고 강화 요마레데 사지단지 루고 강화 공부이나 공부 되는 게 도레스
less so. So there is a meditation that one does where you imagine that the whole entire ground is filled with corpses, corpses. So you do this meditation, and you can actually, it says, achieve single-pointed concentration based on this meditation of impermanence and so forth. So it's a meditation where the whole grounds, everything all around are just bodies and corpses. So you can achieve single-pointed concentration based on that meditation. But the ground isn't really full of corpses. I mean, this isn't something that's true. It's something that you familiarize yourself with and then can actually single-pointedly visualize. So it's similar to that if you do this over and over again, you can accustom your mind to this idea and to the point where it's pliable and it then becomes its way of thinking. So this is how that it's transformed. In a similar way where you imagine this corpses all around. Diso.
다사지 손발 다제지 추공비를 봤어도와 다제지 추공비를 받는 자지 사지 주송 되면서 말이야.
Jusum. Okay.
다제지 게세네 다제지 추공비를 받는 주송 사지 주송 되는 용으로 어들 주송 되면서 자지베.
And then this, So the last category, number 3, are the stages of meditating on how to exchange self with others. And in this section, there are the obstacles to training in this attitude that are presented or brought up. And according to Jayan Sheba's commentary, there are actually 13 categories that Lama Tsongkhapa presents in this section. So we'll go through that. Rinpoche said we've done this before, but we'll go through this now.
Okay, so we're
going to actually start it. Rinpoche said we've gone through this, so we'll start at the number 10th category. So just try to find it.
18.
Juso? Did there depend on pen? Okay, they wrestle. Okay, then so 318. Lagi, let's go. 318. Okay, so the English, Dena Shangi Dun, others' needs, therefore understand the full. 319, so the middle. I believe it's therefore after conquers children. Hold on. The result of enlightenment, the goal of enlightenment. Yeah, therefore. Okay, so right in the center of page 58, we'll see, therefore, after conquerors children understand. So that's where number 10 will begin. Nyuku le, nyuku is sprout. Sprout. Okay.
Rajizi Rayawando, Jenjiban Zibayina, and Tiba Chimbi Shanchul Ruwesrota. Jenjudula Chitu Juatan. Rebu Shanchune, Shanchu Senji Yungule, Joas, Tiba Chimbi Shanchu de Jukala Ten Chibaresana, Tiba Chimbi Shanchu Senli Chibares, Shanchu Senji Yungule Chibares, Yungule Juan, Shishins, Shanchu Senji Yungusana. Henga Gero, Henga la Pijan, Rajin, Zojins, what in the car Mosia doa, Kupacha Hemzua Jura. That Shanju said Yogoli Shonson du Zojin Marve, Zojin. Shanju said what the Shanju said Yogu Zukubarota.
Jan Liana? Ju Chen, the Jan?
Jana, Pijan, Rajin, Zojins, what in the Mosia, Henga. But I never well what in the Kusu, what in the Shagua, and the Zojin, Zojin, Shanju sang Yogule, Shanju sang Yogu Zuzukoba in Jerwada. Shanju sang Yogule and Joan. Nache to the Shanju sang Chegrota. Shanju sang Mango, Nache Marwa. Shanju sang Chebare, Shanju sang Yogule and Joan. Shanchu said Yungul Yuan Sheshin, Tizawa ne, Hinjizines, Tiba Chimbe Lanji Zawa de, Hinji Chimbe Yimba de, Zines, Tizawa Hinjidus, Hinji Tiba Chimbe Lanji Zawa, what the Ketchup do the Cha Mumble Dayong do, Hinji Ketchup Redua, Tizawa, Hinji Chimbe, Tiba Chimbe. Okay, Tuche. Tiba Chenpe Lang Ti Tsawa, Hinji Chenpe Yinpa Ti Zi Ne, Geshe Nang Ne, Geshe Da Shangchu Senpa Ma Rwa, Shangchu Senpa Nang Ne, Gomba Lu Lan La, so Gomba Lu Lan, Ne Yo De Shangchu Sen De, Ne Shangchu Sen Gomba De Lu Lan Ge, Tu Che Res, Lu Lan La, Che Gombe, Shangchu Sen Che Gombe, Tada Tenpa Ra Choba Na, Shangchu Sen Du Gong Ne, Shangchu Sen Tenpa Cha Su Na, Tenpa Ra Choba Na, Shen Tu Shak Ka Yu, Labachi Shoba La, Rama Mepa Yoba Yin Des, Shangchu Sen Du Gong Ne, Gomba Tenpa Cha Su Na, Shen Tu Shak Ka Yu, Jase Ki Shangchu Sen Be Shoba, Le Dong Su Jinba Tang La Soba Wa Tesu Le Ya, Tene Kase Mepa Yung Res, Che Gombe Tada La Tenpa Choba Na, Shen Tu Shak Ka Yu, Labachi Shoba La Yang, Shoba La, Rama Mepa Yoba Yin Des, Shen Tu Shak Ka Yu, Jase Shangchu Sen Be Shoba Tudu Le, Shangchu Sen Ba Su Rama Mepa Yoba Res,
So,
Yoba Yin Des Tenyin Les, Shunju Yin Na, Nyingi Tenbi Tsawa Jen, Nyingi Tenbi Tsawa Jen, Shangchu Sen Jin, Shang Sen Nyogo Le Shong Wang, Yendun Tuanji, Yendun Tuanji Shangchu Ne, Jayu Se Na Gomba She, Ganji Gombe, Tenba Ne, Yenji Dungan Je, Tena, Den Jengan Tena, Santen Dawa Tonen Chang, Name Bayan, Yoba She, Den Ngosa, Qingha Yu, Den Dambi, Yu Tu Chu, Jesos, Jeso Deba Juji Ren Do Juji, the Long Kashi Dang Do Long,
and the Juchi Kabar Gutsogudu, the Long,
Juji, Juba, Juji, the Dana Chu the Das, Tanime, Juji Gutu.
okay, then the Long Kanga Jew.
Dama Juba Kong.
Okay,
Juba
Tuche.
de Juba.
Okay, then the NGK. The Kona the Jason, the Zuchen, the NGK, the Ran Shin, Gichen, Zuchen.
Dan Yenga Kasher, Yenga, Yigi to Khensur, Yigi Hembu Zual, then Sunda Yenga Soro, Sunda Yenga. Yenga Song, the Yigi Hembu Tiwayag, Bijin, Zujin, the Rajik Jens, what then the Hijibu Zuad, Tashi Sundo Sung.
That's okay. The simple lot. So number 10 begins here. Therefore, let me read through it. Therefore, after the conqueror's children understand that full absorption in others' welfare and the goal of enlightenment arise from the sprout of the spirit of enlightenment, and after they see that its root is compassion, they are very intent on cultivating compassion. They become thoroughly conditioned to it so that their compassion and spirit of enlightenment become firm. Thereupon they cannot help but engage in the deeds of the great undertaking that is most challenging. So we'll stop there. The quote is also contained in number 10 as well. But there are different types of enlightenment. So here it says, after conqueror's children understand that full absorption in others' welfare and the goal of enlightenment arise from the sprout of the spirit of enlightenment. Okay, so here it says the goal of enlightenment. There are different types of enlightenment. So there is the hearer enlightenment, there's the enlightenment of the solitary realizer, and then there's the bodhisattva enlightenment, the Mahayana enlightenment, which is, as a translator's note, Buddhahood. So this here, goal of enlightenment, is only speaking of Buddhahood. It's speaking of the Mahayana enlightenment, because it says arise from the sprout of the spirit of enlightenment. The spirit of enlightenment is bodhicitta, the mind that aspires to enlightenment, which is not found in those other vehicles, neither the hearer nor solitary realizer. It's only in the great vehicle where we find that. So here, the specific enlightenment that's being spoken of is Buddhahood, is the Mahayana enlightenment. And the Mahayana enlightenment arises, it says, from the sprout of the spirit of enlightenment. So from the mind that aspires to enlightenment, from bodhicitta, the Buddha arises. The goal of complete enlightenment arises, and it says they see that the root of all of this is great compassion. So the root of the root of the Mahayana path itself is great compassion. So realizing this, they train extensively in this great compassion, which then forces them into this generation of the mind that aspires to enlightenment, which then eventually becomes the cause for the complete Buddhahood. Rinpoche went through a series of divisions of condition. I'm going to have to table that till later. I don't have the vocabulary to do it properly right now. But he was saying that these are specific conditions that when we look at the bodhicitta and we look at great compassion, there's ways to categorize them in terms of the type of condition for the arisal of Buddhahood, and it's just like two words we're missing here. I'm missing here, so I just rather table it instead of make something up that isn't correct or that might not be exact. So this great compassion and the mind that aspires to enlightenment give rise to Buddhahood. Great compassion gives rise to omniscience. Without great compassion, omniscience is not possible. And we see in many, many different texts this pointed out. In the Mahayana Sutra Alamkara, it says its root is great compassion. And what it's speaking of there is the Mahayana path at that point. So its root is great compassion. And then in the Kamala Shila's middle stages of meditation, it's also pointed out that great compassion is the root of omniscience and so forth. So we find in many texts this pointed out. And then also we'll find it in the quote that's about to occur from Shantideva's Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. So we find this sentiment in many, many different texts where it speaks of this. And then here it says they become thoroughly conditioned to it so that their compassion and spirit of enlightenment become firm. So this constant familiarization with these core attitudes makes them solid and stable and incontrovertible, makes it so these actual foundations are immovable and they're actually very stable by doing this over and over again, by this continuous familiarization. It says, thereupon they cannot help but engage in the deeds of the great undertaking that is most challenging. So this familiarization makes it the bodhisattva this familiarization forces the bodhisattva to engage in these deeds. He or she doesn't have a choice because of this great compassion, which is which permeates his or her mind. So the great compassion that permeates the bodhisattva's mind forces him or her to aid others, forces him or her to engage in generosity. And here it says, engage in the deeds of great undertaking that is most challenging. And forces, there's the story of the generosity of giving one's flesh, where the Buddha was a bodhisattva and fed starving tigers with his own skin. He shaved it off with a stick to feed them when he was a bodhisattva. So we see stories like this. And what Rinpoche is saying is that the bodhisattva, and it's saying here, is that the bodhisattva isn't independent, doesn't have a choice in the matter, is overcome by this great compassion and forced, and this is a positive thing, and forced to help others and forced to engage in generosity. So thereupon they cannot help but engage in the deeds. So where it says they cannot help, it's like they don't have independence because their great compassion makes them go do this. And just as a translator's note, our minds are saturated by attachment, so we're forced to want things. A bodhisattva's has this want to have others be happy, so they're forced to make that happen. So that's how that works. So they can't help but engage in these deeds because of this constant familiarization. It's almost like they don't have independence because the mind is what creates Buddhahood. The Buddhahood doesn't come from any external source or any type of form. The Buddhahood comes from the mind itself. And then the mind is saturated with great compassion and a desire to become a Buddha for the sake of others. Then that becomes its primary motivation at all times, and nothing else comes into play at that point for the Buddha or the Bodhisattva. It says, the essay on the spirit of enlightenment states, the fruit of enlightenment solely for others' welfare grows from the sprout of the spirit of enlightenment, which has a root of firm compassion. That is what Conqueror's children cultivate. So here, Conqueror's children are bodhisattvas. The root of their bodhicitta is great compassion that has been cultivated over and over again and has become very firm and stable, and it has been done solely for others' welfare. So this enlightenment that is that the bodhisattva arrives at is done only for others, solely for the sake of others. And it says, one who stabilizes this through conditioning, so through meditation, through familiarization, though initially terrified by the suffering of others, later gives up even the bliss of meditative stabilization and enters the unwavering hell. This is amazing. This is praiseworthy. This is the superior way of excellent beings. So here it says, initially you're afraid of suffering and afraid to actually have to take on some kind of a difficult situation for others. And once you cultivate this and become familiar with it, you would throw yourself into hell for someone else. So that's what basically the point that's being made here in number 10. Kanga laso, Rinpoche.
다 주지 받는 다네 추다달아서 어떤 주지를 해원래. 다네 추다달아서 어두고 인자가 되는 라사유지. 다네 추다달아 담바나지 손주지 사진도와 어떤 만 주지를 해도와.
Leso.
들은 자제베 어데 네 담바고미 나테 담바고미 조지라서 그 나테 되네 샤주지 생고미 주대 지르면서 되는 마땡은 도스다 담바고미 손주 조지라서 나타 되네 근데 샤주지 생고미 주대 되네 마땡은 도스
Like Namtargi Den. Okay, two channel.
되네 되는 도스 다
Less, and then the trunk.
Yeah.
So we're now, again, page 58, right after the quote from Shanti Deva. And it says, basically it'll go on to say, rely on these stories of these previous beings that you've heard. They're called the Namtar, the liberation stories. They're basically, the Namtar, the stories of how this particular being got liberated and how this particular being got liberated. It's each of their stories of their individual liberation. They're called the Namtars. So it's saying study these Namtars of how these other beings got enlightened and then follow their example, basically. So this is what number 11 is going to go on to say.
What that then the truth that la Tamanaji Sundruji Sundu Jejang, never Jebashadis, Tambanaji, Sundu Jejang, never Jebashad, Ranch Jebanzi, Rayawan, Jebanzi, Jebanzi, when the Shaju San, Gombi, Tudo, what the Sulatana, Jebatambazo, not that Luna, and the Sun never Jewars, Sundu never Jebashade, Jewish Enes, Adisha in Shushan Shambatan, Hinji Room Shebe, Shaju Samba Purge, Sheba Sons. Project that Babazul Timothy in Zero, Babazul, Shaju Saint Julie Macan, Shaju Samba in second in Zero, Project Pedula, and the Shaju Saint Julie Macan, and the Shaju Samba in second, Babatan in Zero, you do, and the George what this one by Zero. Shambatan Hinji. Room Shebe, Shaju Samba the Babazo Hakores, Baba, Shaju Samba Purge, Sheba Sons, and Shamba the Ninja Goma Shake, Shaju Samba the Babazo Shakes, 상주 생바이 세가던 요인이고다. 송스.
I get it.
오나 지수시나 담번에 네 고리들 하네 담번에 고리들 하네 셰바시 고송스 담번이네 지수시 간지는 공고를 간지 냐나 제거를 라바이나 오나 지수시나 담번이네 네 샴바다 현재다 상주 생라서부터 순간로 구매되바 셰바지 저는 갈려진 현재 공고레스 담번에 고린진도스 마셰진데데서 용거 샤바 현재라서 어때 버리진의 공고레스 손대서래 고린진도 선에 안에 셰바시 고송스 갈레갈 주는 때에무도
That's Khensur. The Juje, the cheek, the Khensur. The dark cheek, the me, Juje, the Khensur.
Yeah.
Okay, then, so Rinpoche said it's a bit long, number 11, so let's take it in stages or parts. So, number 11, now also develop certainty about these methods by means of the sayings of excellent beings as follows. Atisha said, Tibet recognizes bodhisattvas who do not know how to train in love and compassion. Someone then asked, well then how should bodhisattvas practice? He replied, they must learn it in stages from the beginning. So this is written in a joke format in the Tibetan, and it's written in a kind of sarcastic way, saying that, yeah, Tibet recognizes bodhisattvas that don't train in love and compassion. So that's obviously sarcasm, because someone can't become a bodhisattva without realizing love and compassion. Those are pre-steps to bodhicitta, and someone doesn't become a bodhisattva until they have bodhicitta. So it's basically preposterous that someone thinks that they're a bodhisattva but don't know how to train in love and compassion, because their mind would be saturated with that in order to get to bodhicitta. So the point is then Atisha says they have to learn in stages from the beginning. So that's kind of the joke too. It's hard to bring into English in this sarcastic way that it's put, but it's basically saying, like, Tibet recognizes these bodhisattvas that don't know anything about love and compassion. So if you're saying that there's something for them to practice that they aren't practicing, what should they practice? And Atisha says the steps from the beginning, which mean first recognizing all sentient beings are our mothers, then remembering their kindness, then wishing to repay their kindness, then developing love through the force of attraction, then developing great compassion, then developing the extraordinary attitude, then developing bodhicitta. So this is the 7-point cause and effect for realizing bodhicitta. So as you can see, part of the causes, there's 6 causes and 1 result, are love and compassion. So you see how it's preposterous that someone could say I'm a bodhisattva but not have realized love and compassion, because they're causes of bodhicitta. So that's Atisha saying, if someone wants to practice, they have to start at the beginning. There's no skipping steps. But he's basically saying, these bodhisattvas seem to have gotten to skip all these steps, but you can't. So you have to start at the beginning, realize the first step, then realize the second step, then realize the third step. There's no skipping, there's no way to be a bodhisattva without having realized this, etc. So it'll go on to support those kind of sentiments and all be contained within 11. Okay, Rinpoche. The Injike, the Joklang, the Selpa Yomari, the Joklang Yomari, the Nye, the Joklang Zusun, and Khensur Hakogu.
A lot of time, shenes, Kadambuki,
Less so.
lot of time, shene, Showbatan, any la, Mata Juji, Tato Jidan, Juguyus, Showbatan, Sharawaina, Showbatan, any la, lot of time, Sharawai. Ngani la meta juji dan tato jitu chuguyus son yores meta de karja gosana shanchu jutu senjene jeje senjenji dondu luba teyins metode wadinde ja metode res metode kogures metode 상주 주도 senjene judu menga du jugo senje bada daje nyaba je gon senje bisu de jiro 상주 주도 senjene 르nga 예송게 샤가가로 세jen기 dondu luba jugo 그res 젠도도 루아 주고 그랬어. 세제주도 루바 teyins
Ale.
때 장hat 그 네발가 장무도 주고다 주제
Chikshena de Dakshin Yamje dang Juje Menga Dun Yamdu the Gom Yure. Chikshena Juje Yure. The Yamdu Gom the Lamrim Nangla the Yure.
어때술
Chikshena Juje Yure.
전에잖아 하고에
Hako mare.
장hat 가돌무도 네 네바치불무도
Lessa.
어데 마타 라는 사마다 샤라오 녜니라 마타 주제다 다서 지도 주고유스 마타네 상주주도 생제네 제제 세제지도 로바데스 마타세야데 상주주도 생제네 다전야바지고는 생제바다 준드명아도 주고는 생제네 령아이송 제 쇼바탕제 세제게도 로바데 제도도 도와주고 그래서 대인사 따서네 상주지 세 마제바다 상주지 알레 따서네 상주지 세 따서네 상세 마제바 메네신 페도 못와 다 진진인베 들라 소데네 진노도 종 세진라 티데네 제변도 종아 예송스 제변도 종아 예송스 손도 네바치도 왔다 라르다바다 샤라방에니라 메터 주제다 다도지도 주고유스 메터도 가르자고 그러서나 메터네 상주주도 생제네 상주 생줄제네 령아이송 쉐바 제제 단제 젠제도 로바데 젠주도 로바데인스 령아이송 쉐바 그걸로 젠도도 도와주고 그래서 힘들다 상주 세미냐래 이제로다 따터네 샤세 마지바 마지바 메네신 피도 못와스 샤주센 줄 마지바 다당아주 샤주센 줄 저거 말어 다다 쇼에 저거 말 그러잖아 마지바데 라진진 기제데레스 라진진 다도 내샤세 마지바 다스 마지바 다다 저거 말에 쇼에 저거 말레스 마지바 다스 네 메네 샤주센 메네신 샤주센 줄 여바 있나야 샤주센 메네신 야 컴퓨터 좀 도와대 그 샤주 라진진 기제데레스 컴퓨터 못들어와 다 진진 임베 라진진 임베 들라 소대네 네 라진진 들라 녀부대네 진노도 종스 예진들 녀부대네 진노도 종고레스 세제라 티데네 세제라 안에 가서 그래 당가서 샹바드 니제드네 산당고 인지로 왔다 세제라 티데네 제편도 종아 인송스 따토스게 도드레 인송다다 갈레주는 말이야
Sentient la pen the pui kabiore. Ni last one.
왜 들어왔다 라르스 방고 도와다
Gula.
골라 라르 담비 셰네서 뭐돼 라르 담비 셰네
There.
샤우바당 내니라스
The kanga. Yene
Lord
kaba
Sabbath,
kagadu. Kaba ka.
카에서 다다 울 말에
Oh,
계속
more. Okay.
다다 뭐
Okay. Decent. Okay, so there's going to be a lot more. So we're just taking this again in sections by sections. So then he replied, they must learn in stages from the beginning. Then Lamrim said to Shapopa, these Kadampa, great old Kadampa masters that are being cited here. Langritamba wrote the 8 verses for mind training. And I have 18 human strategies and 1 horse strategy for a total of 19. So Rinpoche said he can't find in the commentaries a commentary what the 18 number is, and we said that perhaps it's some way there is a meditation where you combine the 7-point and the equalizing and exchanging self with others practice. So there could be 18 there. It's possible if you add equanimity and so forth in there. So we'll have to look that up. So the 18 aren't clear what that number specifically is for, and then it's not clarified within the body of the text either. So it's something that someone could go look up. Rinpoche said we'd have to look further into. And 1 horse strategy for a total of 19. Our human strategy is simply to develop the spirit of highest enlightenment and learn to do whatever we do for the sake of living beings. So here it is to develop this bodhicitta and then do whatever for the sake of living beings. So it's a very straightforward, not antagonistic, easy approach if it's possible. And they said, but then there's our horse strategy is this: since self-cherishing keeps the spirit of enlightenment, which has not yet arisen, from arising. So given that you are still in cyclic existence, means that the self-cherishing attitude has not been abandoned. You still have this self-cherishing attitude. So whatever efforts have been made up to this point have not negated or abandoned the self-cherishing attitude. It has remained thus far. And it says, since this self-cherishing attitude keeps coming up and stopping the spirit of enlightenment from arising, it seems like there's something needs to be done immediately about that problem. So it says, which has not arisen, and destabilizes that which has arisen and prevents its increase. So not only does it prevent, once something does happen a little bit, it destabilizes and prevents it from actually growing or maturing. So it says, well, so what can be done? It says, train by keeping self-cherishing away and doing what you can to damage it. So you literally are working at it little by little. Anytime it starts to arise, do anything you can to direct an opponent towards that self-cherishing attitude, to weaken it over and over again. And it says, cherish living beings and do whatever you can to help them. So it's basically do whatever you can to get rid of the self-cherishing, and then do the best you can to help others at all times, and make that your constant effort of daily effort, is to try to ward off the self-cherishing attitude and try to help others to the best of your ability. Ne jorpa Chenmo Lobsang Tenzin. Okay, so we'll stop here for a moment. Rinpoche said we'll take a break. I believe that this goes all the way to the almost to the last paragraph. Let's see, look, scriptures. Yeah, it's probably that. One sec. I hate this thing. Okay, so we're on page 59, and right in the middle, or so. Gron Tomba. Nejor Chenpo. So yeah, we're where it says Nejor Chenpo. Right where we left off. Okay.
Geshe Lharampa las, Gron Tomba la, Nejor Chenpo, Kula, Lonyang Jula, Sobe, Tengan Zenda Dante Yu, Shebes, Chula, Nata Ngao Chi Dong Chang, Meshebe Gong Yue Chang, Shambatan Hinji Shanchuji Semena, Nielsen to Shaba Shagubi, Sajawa Yino Sondes, Zumeji Suzuchula Suba, Mukombines Chi Jur, Dusa Yubala, Gumba Nangos, Tagishi Tambala, the Najuba Chamber, what the Shuba Yubata, Gishi Tambala, no Tambala, Najuba Chamber, Kula, Ngala, Lonyan Jula Subi, Tingan the Tanti Shebis, Ngal Lonyan Jula Subi, Tingan the Mobius, Shubi, and then don't be Kula the Sombaris, and then Najuba Chula, not a Nauch Don Chang, Anju Sang, not Dumba Yina, Mashebi, Gonyu Jang, Shamba Dang, Hinji Shanchu Semena, Nielsen to Shaba Shagubi Sar, Jawa Yino Sondes, what did Gontan Yuba Yina Ute Nyakayuaris Marbe. Zume Sujula Subi, Mokumbi Nesu Chivas, Mokumbi Neji, Zume Suju, Mokumbi Neji, what they think as the Gumba Yina, and the Zume Suju, Mokumbi Nes Jenova.
Less so.
Zume Sujula Subi, Mokumbi Nesu Chi, Judusa Yabala, Gumba Nangos, then Rudembe, Nanjubala Sumbate, what they Mokumbi Chi, Judusa Yabala, Gumba Nangos, Tajirmaji, what they Gumba Das, Gumba Nango. What about Chijujana?
So then we have a conversation between Geshe Lharampa and it says Nejor Chenpo. Nejor Chenpo explained to Geshe Lharampa, so just as an English translated, Nejor Chenpo is just the great yogi, something like that. So a great yogi explained to Lharampa that he had this and that meditative concentration, let me start. Nejor Chenpo explained to Geshe Lharampa that he had this and that meditative concentration wherein the energy balances and absorbs and so forth. Geshe Lharampa explained, even if you have meditation undisturbed even by the beating of a large drum close to your ear, if you do not have love, compassion, and the spirit of enlightenment, you will be reborn in a place that to avoid you must now confess day and night. Lharampa thinks that Nejor Chenpo is proceeding so as to cause his rebirth in a state lacking leisure, such as a rebirth as an ordinary being of the formless realm or the like. There's a warning basically being given by Geshe Lharampa that even if you've developed this single-pointed concentration with this absorption and release and so forth, this won't be a cause for anything more than a formless realm rebirth or a form realm rebirth. It says, or the like, a form or formless realm rebirth. It will not be a cause for enlightenment. And it says, in order to have that not happen, you need to start confessing and practicing right now, because that's where you're headed without the addition of love and compassion in your practice, if you're just practicing on concentrating.
Sentient Jews made who thought you and Magan Sentient Jews Sentient La and you'll shoot the Shebe. You'll shoot the Shebe. Sentient Jejan, Ujala, Tata Wonsons, Rajaki Jews Sentient La, you'll shoot the Shebes, you'll shoot the Shebe in Shilgartido. Rajaki Ju Sentient La, Yuele Shet Shebe, Sentient Jejan, Ojala Tata Wonsons.
Ngatsu the Sentient Salodang Amare, Den Sunsan, the Jepo Gariyana, ngatsu konso pemba mare, konso ngatsu pemba mare, jema ngatsu shanchup yo mare, gangin sena ngatsu the samchen, ropo chega mare.
Ngatsu sije la me phe san ta na.
Lessa.
Sije ngatsu la me phe san
Da
ta.
da da de.
O de se sa
De.
ne. O de son o de ji ju se o de ba tu le ju ji ba san de.
Lessa. So then this will end number 11. So it says Kolumba said, through our disinterest in living beings who are what is most important, they will also do the same to us. So the meaning of this is that if we don't think about benefiting sentient beings, then they won't be of benefit to us. And what that means is we can't achieve Buddhahood. We achieve Buddhahood in dependence upon our care for sentient beings. So if we don't think about benefiting them, then they can't benefit us. So we can't become enlightened, basically. Not bring the benefit of virtue. So by thinking of benefiting them, we get virtue, which leads to happiness. So they're basically bringing us happiness. So if we don't think about benefiting them, they can't benefit us. So that's the meaning behind that. It's a little, in the Tibetan, it's written very subtly and hard to clarify, but that's what the meaning of it is that if we don't think about benefiting others, we won't get what the virtue that comes from that. So they can't, then nothing will happen in the future. So it's like by benefiting others, they benefit us. It's a circle. Less so. So now we start number 12.
Juniba Teba Chembi Zawa Tsu Musu Tang, Teba Chembi Zawa Tsu Musu Tang, Teba Chembi Sito, Juma Meba, Tsu Musu Ndala, Tu Nube, Ju Tangje Ndala, Loje Jejung Tela, Jenale, Majina, Tada Madeba, Tatabu, Tatabu Tenbi, Geshe Lharampa Ten, Teheta Lojong Zhudang, Tatu Ru. Tatabu Tenbi, Suro Dang, Gondela Ta, Ti Juru Tsusa, Ti Didi Geji Deba Shong, Rangyang Tatatu Lojong Na, Sabun Tsangwang, Te Ngebe, Ledum Chungshin, Gawari Des, Tatan Mao de Tes Mudwata.
Lapja Mambo Yuri.
What the Laja Mamudua. Seba Chembi Zawa Tsumu dance, Seba Chembi Zawa Tsumu dance. Tijenji Sido, Juma Meba Tsumu, Tijen did the Abbot Suma to the Shanchu Center, Hinzu to the Tuba de Son de de la Tundu, Dube, Jutanje do, de la Loje Jejun de la Jenale, Shanchu Center, Hila Soto, Lojan Jena, Jul Jagunduna Yabure, Majina de Yuju Mares, Jenale, Majina, Jenale, Majina, Teta Madevas, Yuja Mares, Madeva, Tetabu Tumbi, Gishinyala Tatu Tens, Shanju Sentan, Nijala Soba, Tumbi, Tiba Chimbi Gishinyala Tatu Ten Ures, Theatre, Lujon, True Dance, and the Church Drobo Mole, Drobanyandu de Gures, Churu, Tatalanzan, Bishinyatan, Switching to Tuna said what to say in Jerwa. Theatre, Lujon, True Dance, Tatu Rose, Chudu the Nandu Debaina, Queen and Saint John, Tatu Ru. Tatabu Tumbi, Sonro Dan, Gondela Das, Pachakanju Tenju, Pachabadas, Shanju Sentan, Sinjila Soba Tumbi, Kanju Tenju to Pachabagures, Tatabu Sonro Dan, Gondela Da, Ti Jur, and Gondela Tane, Shegamaduna. Te shea jo tsusa gures ne yala dyumbala tsusa ne didi jan siti bhai buda parela sobe tusuke ne diba shadang che ures, di geji diba jons, wate akasa ure, ju tsusu, yonla dumi kuna tsusaya. Ta diba jonga, ta na nga su dudu jina, teti pai buda, o pare jina, diba mabu tasung ro. Te na jing, ne nga ki, ne wang shu ya, da ju lan ya mabu yoro. O tene ki nyang lan je kure sung ting sa de. Ti geji diba jong, rang tata tu lo jang naas, susu ya tata tu lo jang na, saben sangwa te gen bis, susu lo jang wa te na jing, sheba na jing, lo jang te sheba ina. Ane saben tiba chenpo la, bacha tenpo ya na kores, saben sangwa te gen bis, bacha tenpo ya ba gen ba res, te ngebe le dun mo chung shin ga re de te ta lo no che ba le don da chu yun san tang ju ma ga bu che gu je su ran che gu res ga re des wa de ba ka le che ju nan chu gu dan na
Dig some, Jagamari. Dilela. Jagamari.
wa ka le ju no na
Okay.
la ja mu do da
Less so. So Rinpoche said there's a lot of advice that Jay Rinpoche gives in this section. So he stopped and said, let's just translate what he's given so far, and then we'll keep going. So this is number 12, and I think 12, right? Yeah, 12. Whether you plant the roots of the Mahayana or not, or whether you have genuinely entered the Mahayana or not, is all founded upon this. This isn't in the Tibetan, but love, compassion, cherishing others, and the like. Therefore, always consider what you should do to develop these. It is excellent if you do develop them. If you have not, do not let it remain that way. Always rely on a teacher who gives this kind of teaching. Always associate with friends who are training in their minds in this way. Constantly look at the scriptures and their commentaries which describe these. Amass the collections as causes for these. Okay, so there's a large amount of advice given here. So in order to begin to practice the Mahayana, it's necessary to develop the realizations required to generate the mind that aspires to enlightenment. Because the generation of the mind that aspires to enlightenment is the line of demarcation between Mahayanist and non-Mahayanist, Bodhisattva and non-Bodhisattva. So once one generates bodhicitta, he or she becomes a bodhisattva, he or she becomes a Mahayanist. So the generation of these realizations are necessary in order to become a Mahayanist. So it says if whether you have genuinely entered the Mahayana or not is all founded upon this. So love, compassion, cherishing others, and the like. So these are all causes for bodhicitta. So bodhicitta is what makes you a Mahayanist. Therefore, always consider what you should do to develop these. It is excellent if you develop them. If you have not, do not let it remain that way. So if you have not developed these realizations of love and compassion and so forth, begin to do so by the formulas that have been just taught, the familiarizations that have been presented in this chapter on love, compassion, cherishing others, etc. And then it says, always rely on a teacher who gives this kind of teaching. So there are many different kinds of teachers, and teachers who don't teach the Mahayana. So because this is a Mahayana practice, you need to find a Mahayana teacher. So in order to learn the great vehicle, you have to have a great vehicle teacher to teach you that. So it says that where it says gives this kind of teaching, that's referring to a Mahayana teacher, not a Hinayana teacher, a Mahayana teacher specifically, because these are Mahayana tenets. And it says, always associate with friends who are training their minds in this way. If you associate with others who have excellent qualities better than yours, or have qualities higher than your own qualities will increase. If you surround yourselves with folks of that with higher quality of ethics and so forth, your excellent qualities will increase as well. So this is what it says, associate with friends who are training their minds in this way. So positive friends, people who have excellent qualities, so you can develop excellent qualities. Constantly look at scriptures and their constant commentaries which describe these. The many great vehicle texts in the Kangjur, the pronouncements of Lord Buddha, and the Tanjur, the authentic Indian commentaries. So there are texts about all, the Hinayana, the Mahayana, all the different tenets or divisions of Buddhism are presented within the Kangjur and Tanjur. So this advice is saying specifically look to those commentaries and root texts that are about the Mahayana in order to learn this information. And then amass the collections as causes for these. So in order to understand and realize any of these topics, it's necessary to amass and collect merit. So throughout the process of becoming enlightened, this accumulation of merit over and over again, this amassing of merit is necessary in order to become a Buddha. So those masses of merit become causes for love, causes for compassion, causes for the exchange of that self-cherishing attitude with one that cherishes others. So it's necessary to grow this merit. So by doing prayers such as the 7-limb prayer, we accumulate merit. By engaging in confession of our negativities or acknowledgement of our downfalls, we purify obstructions, we clear away obstacles that we might have. By doing the texts such as the 35 Buddhas of Confession, we're able to purify our misdeeds. We're able to amass and collect merit. Within that text you find the rejoicing and the confessing. These are all ways to collect merit, to amass the collections, it says. So the 35 Buddhas of Confession, the 7-limb prayer, all of these are used to acknowledge downfalls, to amass the collections. And then we want to be able to stabilize the imprints so that they will definitely give rise to what we want. It says amass the collections as causes for these. We want to stabilize all of these imprints that we have. So by acknowledging our downfalls, by doing the 7-limb prayer, by accumulating, confessing, and then also doing things that increase. So there's actual accumulation, then there's increase of what we already have as well. So we also want this increase. So we want purification, accumulation, and increase of what we have. So by doing 7-limb prayers and so forth, we have those components of purification, of accumulation, and of increase of what's already been accumulated. So this is difficult to do, but it becomes more easier as one becomes more familiar with it. It's clear way. Okay, I don't believe Rinpoche went into that sentence. So that's it. Kanga laso.
Tate sui songdu sona choje songdus, cho chenbus, atije. Cho chenbi, teba chenbi, tejenji gorur, jon debes, an teba chenbolin juha, deba yoba ina, jon debe, lujon karche gosana, ne mese, rangchindi meba se, ane deba jonyu, jon sheba, nyenda tabi shanchu sen lujon gores, nyamata dawa tabi shanchu sen lujon jena, rangchindi meba san degre, deba tan gores, keba bebe, jean ron, she son bataro, keba lujon jeni chegua yina, lujon che gores, keba bebe jean rons, she son bataro, so what the juni do
Moreover, if you train your mind in this way, you will definitely acquire all the seeds for developing these. So work is not insignificant. Take joy in it. That's what I missed from before. You will acquire all the seeds for developing these. The seeds are the imprints within our continuum that give rise to experience. So if we train in this way, in the way presented in this text, we will leave imprints that will give rise to this experience. He says, acquire all the seeds for developing these. We will get the imprints that give rise to love, give rise to compassion, give rise to an attitude that cherishes others by familiarization and by leaving those imprints. And then who said this? The great elder Atisha, Lord Atisha. And it says, one who wishes to enter the door of the Mahayana teaching should develop through effort over eons the spirit of enlightenment, which is like the sun that clears away darkness and the moon that quells the torment of heat. So that's number 12.
다 조지고 대바 챔비 티젤라 티제 죽은 존데 비스 다 대바 챔비 죽고 좋으나 세제자고 말해 대바 챔비 죽고 세제인스 대바 지중에 가고 소장 요거는 세제 고나오스 대바 지중에 가고 소장 요거는 세제 고나오스 대바 챔비 죽고 들어와대
Semche.
유파르드시비 티바탄 데브 상아두지 티바니 니기 요거 세제 고그레스 티바 지중에 가고 소장 요거는 세제 고나오스 라르치 모두 바로 요로.
So the mind that aspires to enlightenment is the door to the great vehicle. It is the only door to the great vehicle. So when we look at the great vehicle, the perfection vehicle, there are two categories. There is the causal perfection vehicle and the resultant perfection vehicle. So as a note, the resultant perfection vehicle is Tantrayana. So there's the causal perfection vehicle, Sutra. Resultant perfection vehicle, Tantra. So all of those practices are under the main heading of great vehicle. So the only entrance into the great vehicle is the mind that aspires to enlightenment.
하지 요구하니 하지 TV 요구데 세제인스.
So the entrance into Tantra is an initiation, but the entrance into the tantric vehicle is the mind that aspires to enlightenment. So that's how we find this distinction, because we know that it's said in many texts, you enter mantra through an initiation. But as soon as you say vehicle, then it falls under the category of Mahayana vehicle. And then therefore, the entrance to the Mahayana vehicle is bodhicitta. The entrance to Tantra is an initiation. The entrance to the tantric vehicle is the mind that aspires to enlightenment. That's the differentiation when we look at the etymology of the words and how they break down.
다 티바 챔비 본자 라치지 말베 라치지로와 상주 센데 라치지 그녀베 라우지 그러 말베.
So the abandonment of the great vehicle is the self-cherishing attitude. So when we look at what is the great vehicle abandon, it abandons the self-cherishing attitude. So this is the abandonment. So understanding that a rope is a rope and not a snake is the antidote to the grasping at a rope as a snake, knowing that it's a rope. So this idea of wanting to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings is an opponent to the self-cherishing attitude. So this idea of wanting to become a Buddha for the sake of everyone then serves as an opponent to that attitude which cherishes oneself. So Rinpoche phrased it, does in a way. Does it? The answer is yes. So does the mind that aspires to enlightenment, which is an attitude which wishes to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings, serve as an antidote to the self-cherishing attitude? Yes, it does.
다 라진을 예비요 나 라진이 뭐자 아인스.
So if there is an antidote to the self-cherishing attitude, then is the self-cherishing attitude an abandonment? Ponjayin?
보자이나 라진을 거 아유미. 예퇴도 라제스 줄래. 라니 집부 타바토나냐 상루도 라진이 아인.
Oh, so then is the self-cherishing attitude virtue or non-virtue? Because the here in solitary realizer have an attitude which wishes to become liberated for themselves alone, which is renunciation. So is the self-cherishing attitude virtuous or non-virtuous? So a debate can arise when you think about it, because the enlightenment of the lower vehicles comes about through this attitude of self-cherishing. So this is a question that's a debate topic. So So if it has an antidote, it is an abandonment. And I guess in the first chapter of the Abhisama Alamkara, the point's made. I'm writing like the line of understanding on this, so that's why I'm not able to clarify it beyond the literal words that I'm translating. So if it has an antidote, it is an abandonment according to, just real quickly, if it has an antidote, it is an abandonment according to the first chapter of the Abhisama Alamkara. But we look at the case of here in solitary realizer, where that self-cherishing attitude becomes the cause for their enlightenment. But we would say that it has an antidote because they could become a Mahayanist. So this is how a debate would form, because you can see that it isn't always necessarily the case depending on what it's focused at. So I'm just trying to clarify within the words. Okay. So it says in Pension Sonandrapa's text that if it has an antidote, then it is an abandonment. If there is an antidote, then it is an abandonment. So when we look at the self-cherishing attitude in the mind that aspires to enlightenment, and we compare these, many doubts can arise when we look at an attitude that cherishes yourself in reality, and how that relates to the Mahayana, but also the rest of the vehicles as well. In the Tibetan, this word pongja is like the afflictions are panja, or what you abandon on the path. These are the panjas. The afflictions are the obstructions to omniscience are the panja for the Mahayanist. The afflictive obstructions are the panja for the Hinayanist. So that's what this word we're using, abandonments, means or relates to in other examples. So the abandonments for the Hinayanist are the obstructions to liberation. The abandonments for the Mahayanist are the obstructions to omniscience. The pongja, the donda detsala. Ganjisena, the teichen pongja, the shiji. The teme pongja, the nyonji, the pongja gare. Injike, the pongja that seek detsikan sapudu pecheche. Less so. So if it is an abandonment of the Hinayanist, Rinpoche is saying, then it is necessarily an abandonment of the Mahayanist. So then we could say there is something which is an abandonment of the Mahayanist, but not an abandonment of the Hinayanist. And we would say the obstructions to omniscience. or the imprints of the grasping at true establishment. The imprints of the grasping at true establishment are not abandonments for the Hinayanists, but they are abandonments for the Mahayanists. So then 13, moving on, say, Okay, so then 13, there's just a tiny bit. It says the measure of producing the spirit of enlightenment. Understand the measure of producing the spirit of enlightenment as previously explained. So Geshe Rinpoche is saying, I have already gone in full detail over what this is. So just look back in what you already read and you'll know. And if you look at the first text, we have the measure of renunciation. There's very clear on what measure refers to if you go to the first volume, and it really clarifies what measure refers to in terms of these topics. So you would just apply what measure means in that to this, and then use the points that are made in this section to measure the bodhicitta. So when we look at, for instance, the measure of renunciation, how do we know? It's really like, how do you know it's there? The measure of something in the Buddhism means, how do you know it's there? With a measure of bodhicitta, how do you know that bodhicitta exists? The measure of renunciation. What has to be there in order for there to be renunciation? So in the Three Principal Paths by Lama Tsongkhapa, we find the point being made about renunciation, where it says, day and night, if you are thinking about, here it is, I'll just read it. By constant meditation, you will not entertain a moment's wish even for the successes of life, and you will aim for freedom all day and night. Then you experience transcendent renunciation. So if you aim for freedom all day and night, so meaning if you do nothing in your mind but aim for freedom, meaning you want to be liberated, if all you think about is getting out of samsara, then you have renunciation. So that's the measure of renunciation. So how do you know what's the measure of renunciation? If day and night you aim for freedom. So that's what it would mean. And it's qualified further a couple sentences before it, but it says, by constant meditation, your mind will not entertain a moment's wish even for the successes of this life. You will aim for freedom all day and night. So So at this point, there's been a large accumulation of virtue that's taken place here. And virtue has to be directed at a goal of some sort, or it will just produce some sort of experience of happiness, fleeting happiness, and then go away. But if we dedicate the virtue to becoming Buddhas, to our enlightenment, then that virtue will remain and be a cause, however big or small it is, for our eventual enlightenment. The Buddha said, like a drop of water in a bucket, like a drop of water from a bucket put into an ocean, that water does not disintegrate until the entire ocean disintegrates. Likewise, virtue properly dedicated towards enlightenment does not dissolve or disintegrate until it becomes a cause for that eventual enlightenment. So it's pretty close. So you see this quote a lot and quotes similar to it. So dedication is very important And that's why Rinpoche always stresses that at the end. Whenever we end a class or whenever you do something virtuous, you should always dedicate it to becoming a Buddha for the sake of others.
What Sanju Kumu to Mango Bayina and the Mango Bayina, banana tree of the Viji position this Zulu.
We want our virtues to not be like the fruit of a banana tree, which only arises and then bears no more fruit. The perishes. So we want it to be something that continues. So as we, as individuals, accumulate virtue, it's important that we dedicate the virtue that we have accumulated. So 1 week later, Garshine. Ale, Sonchine Omari. Okay, so next week is the party. So it's Sunday? Saturday and Sunday, so we won't have class, correct? No class, no Tara Puja, nada. Nient. So everyone please come to the party, though. Ted has the information, John has information, Priscilla has information. Everyone probably but me has information. So if you need information, ask anyone but me, and they'll give you the party address and all of that. I'm not always on the pulse. Okay, so we will end there. Thank you very much, everyone. Again, I apologize for being late. I work 7 days a week and have this crazy operations manager job that requires me to always be doing something, and you get it. Samsara. Padmasambhava said, samsara is like standing on top of a needle. You don't ever get a break. All right, you ready? The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the 4 continents, the sun, and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. I dedicate whatever virtues I have collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Losang Drapa to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri and likewise Samantabhadra as well, with whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traversed 3 times. I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. In that pure land surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness. All-powerful Avalokiteshvara, Tenzin Gyatso, may you stay until samsara's end. I pray for the long life of the precious Khensur Wandak, upholder of scriptural and realizational doctrines, a spiritual friend who trained extensively in the 5 great philosophical texts, with exceptional wisdom and perseverance. Tuji Rinpoche, Guti Shapi Denrana, Atsu Lamrim Chambo Konga Tirana.